A reading from Paul's letter to the Romans, the 8th chapter. So then, brothers and sisters, we are debtors, not to the flesh to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received a spirit of adoption. When we cry, Abba, Father, it is that very Spirit bearing witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. If, in fact, we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would be set free from its bondage to decay and would obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. This is the word of the Lord. Those of you who know my family's story know that an adoption is an important part of it. Both of our children have come into our lives by adoption, and we are forever grateful for the birth parents who made an adoption plan for their children. It's changed our lives. You didn't think I was going to miss a chance to show you their adorable faces, did you? So, I always find myself paying a little bit of extra attention when the concept of adoption comes up in the scriptures. In today's reading, Paul tells the believers in Rome, you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received a spirit of adoption. I want to take a look with you today at those two spirits of fear and of adoption. We all have fear in our lives. Anyone who says otherwise to you is either lying or they are so profoundly disconnected from their own emotions that they don't realize that they're lying. Sometimes that fear is a good thing. It keeps us from walking too close to the edge of a cliff or taking huge risks that have a very small chance of paying off. In many respects, fear helps keep us alive. But far too often, fear gets co-opted to get us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise have done. The Roman Empire knew this really well. They ruled by fear. The military muscle that they were able to flex was designed specifically to instill fear and to keep people docile and compliant. Even their preferred method of execution, crucifixions, were designed not just to punish the wrongdoers, but to set an example and to instill fear in those who looked on. Each crucifixion was a sort of billboard, announcing and reminding what happens to the enemies of Rome. It was designed to strike fear into the hearts of their subjects and make sure that everybody stayed in line. There's a reason that appeals to fear are so common. It's that they work. But there's another spirit that Paul contrasts with the spirit of fear. This one he calls the spirit of adoption. And actually, I'm not 100% sure the translators did a great job with that exact translation. I think it might be a little more direct to say that what Paul has written here would be a spirit whose work is adoption. It may seem like a nitpicky change, but it ends up having a big impact on the meaning of the wider passage. One of the things that we know about the early church is that when people converted to Christianity from some other faith, it often came at a very high cost. Many early believers were cut off from their families as a result of their conversions. And with that family cutoff came a separation from any sort of social safety net, from access to markets and trade, from a chance to study under your father to learn how to earn a living. Therefore, it was a part of the responsibility of the early church to build a new kind of family, one not bound by blood, but by choice, by adoption. So, to have a spirit of adoption means reaching out and building a family of God. Specifically, it means reaching out and caring for those who have been cut off, who've been cast aside, who've been overlooked and abandoned. There is a special place for the outsider in the family of God. Do you see how radically different these two different spirits end up being? A spirit of fear relies on strength and coercion and will do whatever it takes to hang on to power. But a spirit of adoption is always on the lookout for someone to welcome, someone to care for, someone to make a part of the family of God. For Paul, being in the family of God isn't just some nice concept. It has profound ramifications. You see, he goes on to argue that if we've been adopted as children of God, then that makes us heirs to God's kingdom. And everything that belongs to God then also belongs to us. It's this hope that lets Paul look out at a world with all of its sufferings and respond not with a spirit of fear, but with a spirit of adoption. He looks at the world's suffering, and instead of seeing it as a lost cause or of some mechanism that is spiraling out of control, Paul sees something new and exciting being born. He calls these sufferings birth pangs, the pain of the final part of the pregnancy that's getting ready to lead to new life. Dear friends, when I look out on the world today, I see a lot of suffering, far more than most of us have ever been asked to carry or to observe before. The needless suffering and death is enough to make the faithful cry out for God's mercy. But as children of God, we can trust that the suffering we see, even though it is real and deep and profound, is not pointless. The sufferings that we endure are not overlooked. They're not meaningless. They're wrapped up in the care of the Creator and the care of the one who has adopted us and now welcomes us into a family that no longer lives in fear. A family whose wounds are real and visible, but not fatal, because they've become the birth pangs of God's new creation. A new creation where mourning and crying and pain are no more, and where nothing separates us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. So be well, dear friends. Have a spirit of adoption and trust that you have been made children of God, and if children, then heirs of all of God's promises. Peace be with you.